Welcome to a Spiritual World podcast, a space where we explore the vastness within and around us, a place to remember that you are a spiritual world within a spiritual world, the mind within the mind of the all. Here, we journey beyond programming, past the pain, and into the true essence of our sovereignty. My name is Toriea, and my sole mission is for you to find the guru within and remember yourself as the creatrix of your world, embodying the power within you to build a life you love. As always, you're encouraged to go back to episode 1 for the full disclaimers on the terminology of mystic psychology. I am not a medical professional, and nothing shared in this podcast is intended to replace professional medical or mental health care. The term mystic psychology is not used in a clinical or medical context and has no connection to the medical field or industry. It is a spiritual and energetic framework rooted in the ancient wisdom and sciences of Hermeticism, intended to support self-exploration and inner awakening. If you are seeking medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment, please consult a licensed medical or mental health professional. Everything shared here is based on my own personal lived experiences and energetic perspectives, offered in the spirit of empowerment and remembrance. Please take what you need and leave the rest. I am honored to walk beside you as a channel, a guide, and a fellow traveler as we continue on this path together. Welcome to a Spiritual World podcast, a space where healing is honored, truth is sacred, and your soul is always invited to take up more space. I'm this channel's host, Toriea, and today we're entering what I call the decade of the inner adolescent, not just as a memory of our teenage years, as an energetic season in our life that shaped how we rebelled, how we hid, how we performed, and how we survived. This episode is an invitation to honor that fire, to acknowledge the ways we were not safe to become ourselves, and to reclaim the parts of us that still carry that flame, whether wild, wounded, or waiting to be seen. And as a disclaimer, before we jump right in, I am in between vacations, holidays, whatever we want to call it, and I have family over with extra animals. And it's a beautiful Sunday where people are enjoying their doors being open again and lawn mowing. So background noises might occur, just go with the flow. So our first segment is all about the inner adolescent as a threshold. Teenagehood is not just a phase. It's a spiritual rite of passage. Every year, decade, I happen to organically divide my life up into decades. I don't know what other people do. I haven't had a real open conversation about it. However, mine's decades. Nothing wrong with it, nothing right about it, right? It's just unique to me and what flows with my being. And so every decade is a spiritual rite of passage in its own. However, teenagehood, I think, is something that we need to hone in on and the sacredness of it, because it's some of the most struggling years, just in general. And it's the decade when the soul begins to separate from the family matrix, to observe the world with new eyes. It's when the truth begins to sting. And because you realize that this world doesn't always make sense, and people are often dishonest, you start to see that authority is often flawed, and yet you're just expected to grow up within it. So what does the inner adolescent do, right? Whenever these things happen. And from my experience and from what I see in mentoring teenagers, as well as my own experience, like I said, my own experiences, which is a lot of where this comes from, they end up fighting. They end up freezing. They end up fawning. They end up flighting, so running. This is the decade where a lot of rebellion is born. And not because the soul is broken, it's because the soul is awakening. And if it isn't safe to emerge authentically, it will find any way to survive. So, safety as the core ingredient. Here's where we bring it down to the root. Safety determines everything. If you weren't emotionally safe as a teenager, if your home wasn't a space to cry or to question or to be messy or angry, if your voice was punished or your creativity mocked or your truth denied, then rebellion wasn't a choice. It was a protection mechanism. Without safety, rebellion becomes a distorted form of authenticity. You act out, or you disappear. You numb, or you overachieve. The nervous system takes the wheel, and your soul, the one just starting to peek through, it's taught it's too much. When the world says be yourself, but your environment says, just not like that, the adolescent inside you begins to fragment further. And so let's talk about the ones who didn't rebel as well, because there's always a paradox in everything that we discuss. Were the ones that didn't rebel really actually rebelling in the overachieving or in the disappearing? Maybe they weren't acting out. Maybe they weren't trying to numb. Those two seem to get more attention than overachieving and disappearing do. Or were they just well-adjusted? Or were they well-conditioned? Some teens grew up in safe, open homes where they could question things and be supported while doing it. And for them, rebellion wasn't as necessary. And for others, calm didn't mean peace. It meant programming. They were taught obedience, religion, and hard work over inquiry, feeling, and personal truth. Especially in middle class or highly religious homes, calmness was currency. Good behavior meant worth, and compliance meant love. It's not a judgment. It's just an awareness that some of us stayed quiet because the cost of rebellion felt way too high. Or maybe we saw one of our siblings rebel and realized the pain and the chaos that it caused, and we didn't want to contribute to that. We wanted to go about it a different way. And so for many, that inner fire didn't die. It just waited for another decade to rise. So when it comes down to revisiting the inner teen, if you've ever felt like you hit a wall in adulthood, maybe in your 30s or 40s, and suddenly everything started falling apart or waking up, you might be revisiting your decade of the inner adolescent. This could be 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. It really is infinite in how it can show up. And this happens when we finally feel safe enough, financially, relationally, emotionally, to touch the pain that we buried during that time. And I do like to kind of put a little disclaimer that this is probably going to be kind of a common overhaul that we see, right? Because the inner adolescent, the inner child, even the inner tween, which I like to call like teenagers to 20s, that's a lot of programming, right? And as we get older and as society awakens, one of the things that we're here to do is deprogram. And so our inner adolescence is a big, threshold in that regard. However, this is kind of unanimous, you know what I mean? How and when this happens for each individual. But we're focusing on the inner adolescent today. So it's why spiritual awakening can feel like being a teenager all over again. Confused, angry, questioning everything. And now you have a deeper awareness. Now you get to reparent yourself. You get to become the parent that you always needed. And it doesn't mean that we're discrediting our parents in any way, shape, or form, right? Just sometimes our parents didn't give us what we needed at the time. And that's okay, because that's what we signed up for. And now we're here to kind of do it a little bit differently, to anchor in a different vibration, raise our vibration, heal, and be able to move forward from the patterns that those created. So you get to offer safety instead of suppression, curiosity instead of punishment. And the question is no longer, why did I rebel? It's, what was I trying to protect? Because even in the destruction and the chaos, you're still normally trying to protect something. Whether it's a belief system, yourself, your soul, whatever it may be. So, what I want to do is I want to kind of land with something for your nervous system and your soul. And so I've come up with a little affirmation. And if you have, the time, repeat it in your mind or repeat it out loud. And the first line of it is, I create safety for my fire. I create safety for my fire. I honor the truth I had to hide. I honor the truth I had to hide. I welcome back the part of me that was too loud, too much, too wild, too real. I welcome back the part of me that was too loud, too much, too wild, too real. You are safe now. You can be. You are safe now. You can be. And then once you get done repeating that and embodying it, we're going to ask ourselves the question, what truth was too dangerous for me to express in my inner adolescent decade that I now choose to honor today? What truth was too dangerous for me to express in my inner adolescent decade that I now choose to honor today? One more time. What truth was too dangerous for me to express in my inner adolescent decade that I now choose to honor today? We're going to take just a couple of moments here while you filter through your truth and really receive before moving on. So that truth that just rose up to confront you because you called it in, that truth that you just reflected on, it didn't disappear. It went underground, under consciousness, in the sub. And now it might be resurfacing as different behaviors that come along with it. So defiance or people-pleasing cycles could surface, where you have some sudden rebellion against authority figures or over-compliance to avoid conflict. Creative blocks, because your teenage self learned that your voice isn't always welcome here. And hyper-independence or clinginess, the fear of being controlled versus the fear of abandonment. This isn't regression, it's renegotiation. Your system is asking, can I finally have what I needed back then? A lot of times doing this work, we also have new memories surface from those years. helping to trigger you into new layers of healing, because every trigger is a key to a new doorway. Remembering behaviors and patterns and things that you now realize that you can release into the abyss of transmutation because it no longer serves you. And so when it comes down to it, we want to finish the adolescent's unfinished business. And we want to parent your inner teen as a ritual of reclamation, right? And so the ways that we can do this is practical, somatic, and spiritual practices to integrate the inner adolescent. We can dialogue with our teen self. We can ask them, what did you need me to know back then that I'm ready to hear now? And you can write with your non-dominant hand for their voice. And if you really feel confident, you can write with your regular hand as well. There is no right or wrong way to do this. Just doing it is what is so important, because your higher self will lead you how to do it in the best way that is for you. And so some symbolic reparenting is, did your inner teen need permission to be angry? Put on some music that they loved and scream into a pillow. Jam out to that Eminem, right? Put that song on repeat. Feel that rage and allow it to leave your body, right? We know a big difference between a song that holds like trauma or energy in our bodies, right? There are certain songs that we would have heard back then, and if we listen to them now, they invoke the same memories and the same energy. That means we're still carrying it. However, I know that now I can listen to an Eminem song and it's just lyrics to me now. It doesn't hold emotion for me anymore because my rage and my anger and my bitterness have all evaporated into something new and beautiful. And they each chose their own new jobs and where they went for healing and all of these magnificent things, because every part of us is an entity in itself. That is why we are a spiritual world within ourselves. Our organs, our nervous system, our cells, membranes, every part of us is its own little entity. You can name them all if you want. Susie, Sharon, Tupac, whatever. So another symbolic reparenting question is, did your inner adolescent need to be seen? And if so, place a photo of your teenage self on your altar and offer them a kind gaze daily. Look at them in a new light, a new beauty, a new reverence, a new sovereignty, a new deeper understanding for carrying you where you are today. And even if you're still sorting through the shit of the past, we still owe that reverence to them because they helped us survive. They helped us get to even the cusp of this amazing spiritual awakening. And so, nervous system upgrade, right? When you feel a teenage angst or that adolescent reactivity, shame, rebellion, shutdown, putting baby in a corner, place a hand on your heart and say to yourself, you are safe now. We do this differently. And you will be able to feel all of that programming, all that ancestral, just kind of push back. Doing that creates a safe haven and pushes all of those other energies that would instead tell you to, no, that's the wrong way to do it. Don't do it that way. Slap some tobacco on it. Quit crying. All of those things. It pushes all of those energies back just a little bit. And then you repeat it again, push them back a little bit more, right? The way that we grow our heart space, the way that we grow our energy field, we can also push other people's energy fields away from us. And so, as we begin to end this episode, I want to present you with a gift of the adolescent flame, which is, ending on a note of empowerment. This whole podcast is to empower you. Every episode, every word is to empower you, nourish you, and how this adolescent flame energy fuels our sovereignty still today. the inner adolescent isn't just a wound, it's a life force. That same fire that made you question unfair rules or why adults got to lie, it's what now helps you set boundaries with love, decide that you want to be the change, reject spiritual bypassing, creating art that disrupts, choosing pleasure without guilt, choosing abundance without sacrifice. Your rebellion was always and is always holy. Your silence was always and is always sacred. And now your becoming is absolutely inevitable. I'd like to thank you for trusting me with your fire in this episode. And I'd love any comments or feedback of how it resonated with you. And I do strongly recommend that maybe going back to the certain points in the podcast and using some of the questioning or the dialoguing as journal prompts. That automatic writing is just really, really powerful. And of course, yes, there will be a meditation and an energy therapy session specifically on these two. So those will come out Wednesday and Friday. I will probably try to do something additional because I'm trying to do a schedule of Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays until I finally get these readings going on Saturdays. You'll hear me talk about them. I promise they will be out. Just waiting on that energy. We're just on the cusp of all these changes. So, and any other topics that you guys want to hear, I'm always open to anything and everything that would be a good discussion that you feel that would move your soul, or any questions that you have. You can leave them on the YouTube channel. Underneath the episode, you can text them to me. There's a link in the podcast description where you can text something to me, and I'm always open to them. So that's all we have for today. Sometimes I feel like I need to fill more space, but I feel like this was appropriate where it's landed. And right, this is again my own inner adolescent. I don't need to perform. I don't need to overexert myself. I don't need to make the podcast a certain length. It will all work out as it should. Timing tells what we know so well. So, as always, I have an abundance of gratitude for every listener, every client, every suggestion, every connection. And so I will leave you today. Namaste, and many, many blessings on your way.